I recently re-listened to Endurance about a certain Mr. Shackleton. And a little birdie told me that that might be of interest to you. What's the interest with Shackleton?
Shackleton. So my LLC is Shackleton Brokers PLLC, which shows you my devotion to the great man. So of course, he was the man who wrestled victory from the jaws of defeat when his ship was trapped in the ice. But it's much more than that. You got to go back to his first days, and first and foremost, the book to read is merely simply titled South, and that's his own book written about his journey to the Antarctic and the tragedy that befell them and how he got his men out of difficulty. Shackleton's boat journey is a smaller book, but that's part of the issue. So he was an Irishman, and when he was born in Ireland. But of course, Ireland at that time, prior to independence, at that time was part of Great Britain. So he was a Brit, or again, there was a differentiation between Brits and English. It's always been hazy, but he was a Brit, and so he was considered sort of one of the team, as it were. And really, exploration was held by the Navy. They particularly anything where a ship came into being, bang, they grabbed it and it was theirs. So they had a guy called Scott, and he had his first expedition to the South Pole, and Shackleton went with him. And the ship, so often these are known by the name of the ship, and that was the Discovery expedition. And the Discovery is in Dundee. It was built in Dundee, and there it rests today, right there on the waterfront in Dundee. And I've been on the Discovery, and I have pictures of myself, and I have pictures of the wardroom, Scott's cabin, and Shackleton's cabins. And so down they went, and they always had this thing about the exploration was for the good of science. That was the thing. And but in fact, it was really to get as close to the pole as they could. So Scott and Shackleton and one other, I think it was Wilson, the three of them set off on this trek to the South Pole, and they got so far, but Shackleton developed problems with his feet, which is often, scurvy related, and they didn't really know. Limeys, we were called limeys. The Brits were called limeys because we ate lime, and so they had to turn back and get back, and they were close to death, but they got back, and Scott never forgave him for that, so he sent him back at the next opportunity, and then he stayed, but they didn't really make any other attempts on the pole at that time. Then they came back. Shackleton, he then organised his own expedition. He went down and onto the ice, and then they headed for the pole, and he got furthest south. And when he came back, he was knighted. He was knighted. So Scott obviously wasn't terribly happy about it. They were sort of arch rivals for forever. And then Scott went down, and the famous Scott expedition, he raced Amundsen to the pole. Amundsen beat him. The trick was not to get there, but not to die. I mean, that was the thing. And Scott. So when Shackleton went on his own expedition and he got further south, he knew when to turn back, because one more step and you're dead, because you can't get back in time. And so Shackleton knew when to turn back and got back, and and it was appropriately Sir Ernest. He was knighted. Scott kept going, although he's behind schedule, and he made some other errors, shall we say. When he got to the pole, Amundsen had been there and gone a month before, so he was way late, and on the way back, the 5 of them, were killed, died. And then Shackleton, so now, but it had been, the pole had been taken, so Shackleton decided that he wanted to do something, they're always about putting their name on a plaque, and so what he would do was a transpolar expedition, which is the one you're referring to. So he had a group at the other end, and he was at one end, and he was going to go across, but of course they got stuck in the ice, and then this fantastic story of him getting the guys off the ship. The ship eventually was crushed by the ice and sank. And of course, a couple of years ago they found it again, which all part of the story. And the way that they got him off the ice, so they got the boats, the 3 boats. And one of which is the James Caird, and we'll come back to that in a second. And so the 3 small boats, and they on the ice, right off into the water. Oh, then it was freezing, and back off there. So, and eventually they got to open territory, open water, and then they sailed into wherever they could, the bit of land that they could, called Elephant Island, named after elephant seals, of course. And Elephant Island. We'll come back to Elephant Island. So Elephant Island, he dropped. So there were 28 of them in total. Yeah. 22 stayed on Elephant Island, and 6 of them then headed 850 miles across the worst water in the world to South Georgia.
In a boat that's probably not as big as these 3 rooms put together.
Indeed. If you want, I'll show you the photo of when I'm touching the boat. It's in Dulwich College, which is in, we'll say South London, it's a bit southeast London. Dulwich College, it's there where Shackleton went to Dulwich College, didn't cover himself in too much glory at school. He was only there for 1 year and there was asked to leave, but that was his college, and so it's there. And I could show you a photo with my hand on the James Caird, and this is a very, very, very small boat. The carpenter, Chippy, he built the gunwale up a little bit from wood from the other 2, and then left them on the island. They used the other 2 as some form of shelter for the 22 that remained. So he built it up a wee bit and then covered it over, and then the skipper, the boat skipper, the fantastic feat of sailing to get them from one speck in the water to another speck in the water 850 miles away. And of course that's only half the story, because when they got to the island, they were on the wrong side, and they couldn't sail around the other side because the winds would have just kept them going, and they were exhausted anyway. So 3 of them stayed, and Shackleton and 2 others then climbed. And we're not talking a hill, we're talking real, genuine, proper. They screwed screws into the soles of their boots to make crampons to go up the ice and over the top, and then knocked on the door of the hut where they'd left 2 years previously on their way down, and said, "I'm Shackleton." And so that was it was a tremendous feat. And then to get back to his 22 men, it was encased in ice, Elephant Island, and he had 3 or 4 attempts. A Chilean, he managed to get a Chilean boat, and they got him off, got all the guys off, and a hero for me certainly, and a hero for many people. So Elephant Island. So 3 years ago, I went on a cruise to Antarctica, and of course we stopped on the way back. So we went down. I mean, it was just a look-see cruise that I did, and we went down there and came back, and on the way back they stopped at Elephant Island. There's nothing to see, nothing, you can't get off, obviously, but I mean everything is straight into the sea. It was just on the other side of where we were. It's quite big, but on the other side there were some flat bits, and one of which they managed to get the crew onto, and they just lived on seabirds and penguins and whatever they could. 4.5 months they were on the 4.5 months before he could get them off.
Do you think if you were part of that crew, would you have volunteered to be the one of the 7 that did the 850-mile journey, or would you have been like, this is dry land and it's...
Well, I think, they didn't know, did they, until he turned up at 4.5 months later. They didn't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knew they were there, of course. And so I think to have a little bit of your destiny in your hands would have been better, but I'm no sailor, so I don't know. He probably would have chosen me anyway. Yeah, so, but there was one guy who lost some toes to frostbite. Other than that, they were all fine. I think... Because, so this was 1916. They actually set off from London just as war was breaking out in 1914. And I think, and I'm not sure about this, but when they got back, I think that the first one to be killed was like 3 weeks later, had volunteered and it was in the trenches and was killed in the trenches, for the irony of it all,
Yeah.
So, but these were brave, incredible. They don't, you don't meet people like this, all of them. They were just, so the story is a marvelous, it's a marvelous, fantastic story. And as you can tell, I'm just enraptured by
just a little well versed. Yeah. But so Shaun, I think to anyone listening to this would obviously pick up that you're not from Florida.
No, not originally. Of course, am I? I'm from the north of England. I'm from the what was when I was a lad. So I'm not as young as I used to be. I was born in 1948, and so I'm still operating as a business broker, as you know. And the reason is because I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't know what I'd do without it. The mental exercise of business brokering. I just absolutely love it. And meeting people and doing things and making a deal happen. And, as you know, I have my own podcast, which is called Happy Buyer, Happy Seller. And, I enjoy, doing that. So I was brought up in the 50s in Britain, post-war Britain, and obviously into the 60s. And then we had the Beatles came along in 1963. So which is from the north of England as well, right opposite. So I'm on the eastern side of England, Yorkshire, and Liverpool, and Manchester is in Lancashire. So that's where I'm from. And when I'm industrial and grimy, north of England in the 50s and 60s, and so my town is. Just outside of the city of Sheffield, and Sheffield is known for steel, and so we had steel industry, and you had a choice really. You could either go down the coal mines or work in the steel mills. I left school at 16 and went into the steel mills as an apprentice electrician, and then I went to day school and then I was sponsored to go to college. So I went to college and as an electrical engineer. That's where I am. And so and then I worked as an electrical engineer for a few years, but never really had my heart in it. I have to say that wasn't really my thing. I joined a company. So initially I worked at the steel company itself, but then I left and I joined a company that made equipment for the steel industry, all kinds of equipment for the steel industry. A company called DAVY, Davy, and it had some sort of names following it: Davy United, Davy Lurvy, Davy McKee, which was an American company. They bought the McKee bit. So and then I got switched over to the States. For a little quick 2-year assignment in 1980, and it was good. It was good, and it's funny because I was thinking about what we were going to be talking about today, and it's funny because people used to say to me, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm an electrical engineer, but I'm currently working in sales." That was it. And one day I was putting my tie on. going out on another sales call, and I'll tell you about the sort of circumstances of how we operated. But I was putting my tie on one morning, and I looked in the mirror, and I actually said to myself, "No, you're a salesman." And that was that moment. I'd probably been doing it for about 18 months. And when I came to the States, they just hired a sales manager, and literally he put a pencil line down the center of so it was on the Ohio-Pennsylvania borderline and all the way down, and said, "You take the east of that, I'll take the west, go." And so I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Just make appointments, call up people, call up production people, engineering people, management people, and tell them, go make appointments and tell them what we do." So I was on and off planes for, about 10 years, 10, 12 planes a week, week after week after, every week, not some weeks.
So I have to ask, because, I came from 10 years in sales, but when I started in sales, it was, here's your territory, go, and then a click of a button, and the computer would just run this list of 1,000 names to call. What was the process for setting those appointments?
Well, it was a little simpler and cruder than that. I called up people and said, could you put me through to the, I call up Inland Steel and say, or could you put me through to the engineering manager, please? And I have to say the accent does help.
I think it does.
So idiot Englishmen abroad, I'll tell you, it really works, and so I would just used to, and I'd just go in and what they told me to do was to just get out there and spread the word about our company, which was one of the foremost steel mill equipment suppliers in the world. Nobody knew about us. I mean, nobody at all knew about us. So I'd go in. I was thinking, again, as I was driving in, I remember going to see one guy one time, and he said to me, and it really, so here we are now, 40 or 45 years later, if you will. And he said to me, so it was a little small Allegheny Ludlam, or I don't know which, it might have been a company, or LTV, maybe LTV, the small re-rolling plant. So it wasn't one of the big ones, but it was there. And he was engineering manager. So I called him up, right, and I went, morning, fine. And he said to me, "Oh, hello, yes, fine. So what do you have for me today?" Those were his exact words. "What do you have for me today?" And it's like I felt like a brush salesman. I really did. I was really insulted. Well, could you show me a sample of what it was literally, here I am from Davy, and we rolling mills, and we really, yes, we do, and we build how big, how long, and it was a real slap in the face that he thinks I'm a salesman. And as I said to you, then shortly thereafter, I said, "Well, you're a salesman. That's right. That's what you're there to do. You're there to introduce the company and eventually get." So we also had, so I was from the steel side, but we also had an aluminum side. Notice I say it with the correct pronunciation. And we had an aluminum side. And I wouldn't have known an aluminum mill if I'd tripped over it, But here I am now. I'm going in, and I'm going to talk to people who, they roll aluminum every day, and I've never seen one, and I'm going to tell them about, So that was interesting. And in those days, the steel industry was in a bit of a decline. They'd spend a lot of money on EPA requirements in the 70s. And of course, that doesn't get you a single, dollar on the bottom line. It costs you a heck of a lot, of course. And so it was in a bit of a bad way. Lackawanna up in Buffalo, just outside of Buffalo. When I went there the first time, it had 25,000 employees. By the time, in the late 80s, I think they were down to 1,000 at most, and that was typical of the certain places declined. So aluminum really sort of saved our bacon, and I went and I would go and meet with people, and I was selling a particular product then, a quality enhancement, a quality product that we had for improving the quality of the material, and we did okay. And I was I was visiting this plant up in Oswego, New York, if you know where that is. I think it's the snow capital of the country. It's right on the lake, and I made an appointment to see this engineering manager, and I said, well, here I am, da, 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 da. And he said, yeah. I said, well, tell me about what's happening. And he said, yeah, we got this real problem. And I said, okay, how can I help you? And he said, well, we've got this problem because this. And I said, yeah, okay, well, yeah, I think there's one way of looking at it if you did this, and then this, and this led to this, the biggest project we'd had in the country. It took 18 months. These are not overnight sensations, but it took 18 months to develop this. And the thing is that here's me, early 30s, and when you're putting solutions together like this, you have to get the team together, because you have to do very good, very specific engineering solutions, bespoke solutions, and you got to get the team together. You got to tell them what's wanted. So here's people I've never met before who are coming out from the UK. Right, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to meet with so and so, and this is a big thing for them, and you got to concentrate on that and make sure that we've got an answer to that. And so here's me. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't know an aluminum mill if I saw it, but I suppose that the one thing that I realized was that people need leadership, people need guidance, and some people can and some people can't. But it did teach me that. It taught me how to, in a proper way, make sure that everything was ready to go, and you could put the presentation together to the client, and these were the solutions that they were looking for, and it just got more and more and more of that. And we did that order. We got right at the end of '82. It was a really big order for us, and sort of put us on the map a little bit. I was very proud of that.
So I was, planning and thinking about this conversation, and I was, the question I posed to you in our conversation was, when did you decide to bet on yourself, or why did you decide to bet on yourself? And I'm curious, 60s, 70s, 80s, even in the 90s, right? Yeah. I think that covers the bulk of your steel career. Mm-hmm. But you've got the Beatles, you've got the Felix Dennises of the world, you've got the Richard Bransons, the counterculture that's going on in Britain, and these guys who are going out and building these massive companies. Was there any moment during that corporate career, if you will, where you're like, man, I should be doing something myself instead? Well,
it's always cozy being part of a corporate group, isn't it? You feel safe, and so my big thing was, so I went back to the UK, and I ran international sales from there, negotiating contracts, and I spent a year in South Africa. I spent a lot of time up the jungle in Brazil. I mean, literally up the jungle in Brazil. Steel plants aren't always where you want them to be, and so that was good. South Korea, Russia. Pretty interesting contract in Russia, and so I was happy. I was happy with that, and then I got switched back to the States, and I was running with a company, and then I got headhunted to run a company up in Ohio, and it was from a German company who are really one of the best. And then a corporate come together, one of those, one bought the other, and they closed me down. They looked after me. I have no complaints how they looked after me, but there were some really good people lost their livelihood, which saddened me greatly, but it's one of those corporate things. So I thought, there's got to be something different. And a buddy of mine so I was working in Ohio, but I was actually still living in Pittsburgh. A buddy of mine was a business broker, and we were chatting one day, and he said, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I really don't know. I'm looking for, there's a few positions around Pittsburgh.
How long ago was this?
This is 2003.
Okay.
So what's that? 23 years ago. And I said, well, tell, what do you think? Tell me more. And he said, I think with your background, you'd be, good at it. And so he introduced me to an outfit called BBN, Business Brokers Network, headquartered in Dallas. So my wife and I actually flew down and met with them. And okay, fine. I said, but not in Pittsburgh. We're moving south. And so this was a really big decision, big decision to leave the corporate world, to sort of strike out on my own, as it were, because you're not on your own, but you are on your own. And if I'd have been with BBN, just with BBN, then it would have been really on my own. And they provide all the documents and paperwork, and but I said, I'm going to Florida. So you need to meet a guy called Murphy. He's our man in Florida. So I came down to Clearwater, and met with Roger, who was a prince of a man, and I realised in 2 minutes he was nobody's man, and but he had the arrangement that if anybody came to Florida, he would take them on, and we struck it off, and I said, well, I'm gonna move to Sarasota. He said, you'll enjoy Sarasota. It's a lovely place. He said, you won't make any money there, but yeah, he was very forthright with our Roger. And I said, no, you misunderstood me. I think it's my accent. You're missing. I said Orlando. He said, aha. I think you'll be okay in Orlando. Yeah, that's it. It was a bit of a toss of a coin. And so we came to Orlando, which, is, I've loved living here. It's a great city, really is, except for the the roads, but that's going to be improved. But there's a lot of traffic around here. But so that was a big move to move away from corporate into an independent operation. I was part of Murphy, and I was delighted to be part of Murphy. Great company. Changing location, but you're still on your own as a business broker. You still got to go out and meet people and generate interest, and talk to them about their business, and understand their business, and whatever, and then buyers, of course, coming in. So it's very much sink or swim yourself. And although I certainly had the net there with Murphy and the advice, and I think the other thing is BBF, Business Brokers of Florida, all of the documentation that we use here in Florida, which is very, very good, very, very helpful, and improving all the time. So we've got a really nice situation here, and I think probably we would argue the number one brokers organisation in the country, which means the world. So yeah. It's very, very good. Yeah. So that was a big move for me.
What was those those first few years like? Because I'm in the thick of it right now, but did it kind of take you back to your first year as a salesman for the steel mills? Yes. You got to get out there and get yourself known. There's a lot you don't know about this business. Lots of it come naturally now, of course. But if every deal, you learn something new on every deal, without question. Even now, I learn something on every deal I'm doing. So it was somewhat similar, but it's not easy. And in those days, of course, it was mailings. Sending out mailings. Not for me the best way of doing it, but Roger always believed in that, and I think to this day they when somebody signs up anew, they have to agree to a certain number of mailings. That's the traditional way of doing it. If you go to, I've been to IBBA meetings, that's the International Business Brokers Association meetings recently, and some guys will get up and say mailings. And of course the other one is the letter on the door at 7 o'clock in the morning. Go into an arcade of stores and shops, and then just put to the owner, hoping that they'll read the
the letter inside and say, oh yeah, come and talk to me. I find that very difficult to do. I've never done that. Maybe I'm a snob. I could be, a bit snobbish about it, but I'm not saying don't do it, but I am saying that I never did. But the letters, but again, you got to look then, and I imagine probably now the return, very, very low. The number of interests that you get from it is very low, and then the resulting, will I get to to an actual listing? It's tough, but some people like it, some people don't, and not for me. But now, of course, we have other methods. We have other methods, podcasts, for. Like this one, and I've just started doing a number myself, and the social media, and I find I love to get in front of people and talk to them about their business. What is it? What is it about your business that you can tell me, and what makes it unique? And of course, what are your plans? What are your plans? Where do you want to go? Is it next week, next year? 10 years? So be prepared. Prepare. That's my motto for people who are thinking of selling their business at some stage. So it's very important, isn't it?
And then so with Murphy for quite some time, and then you were going to strike out on your own, as I understand it.
That's true, yeah. So I was with Murphy for 16 years. Unfortunately, Roger Murphy and his right-hand man, Jim Sinclair, they passed away. Two terrific guys, and so a new guy came in who was very good. I liked him, but I thought it was time to leave that particular organization and way of doing business behind. That was a franchise, and I felt I wasn't getting my worth from the franchise. That was really it. I was paying a franchise fee, and I really wasn't getting. It was really set up for, and I think it was probably set up for people who have more. I don't carry multitudinous listings. I don't know how some people do it, but I don't. I like to think that when I list a business for sale, and this is really important, when I list a business for sale, it's because I genuinely believe I can sell it. Perhaps, 15, 20 years ago, maybe I wasn't so sure I could sell it. I thought I could sell it. But nowadays, I really do need to feel that I will be able to sell that business at the agreed, not just the agreed price. That's not just it, but, the agreed principle of sale. When you do this, then this will occur and this will follow, So I made the decision. I had a clause in my franchise agreement that I could do that, and I invoked that clause. It was right at the time of COVID, and so I thought, goodness knows what's going to happen with COVID anyway. So that was that, but I did close a pretty decent deal with Murphy right at the end of 2020, and as I was doing so, I was chatting with the attorney who I've used for many deals, and he's our good friend Ed Alexander, and we'd done the deal, and we were having a coffee, and I said to him, "Oh, by the way, this is my last Murphy deal. I've got a broker's license, so I'm going to form my own brokerage and just put my shingle underneath, and then I've only got myself to argue with." And he said, he really literally said, "No, you don't." And 2-3 days later, I was sitting down with him and his partner, Matt FitzGibbon, who I've known both of them for, 15, 20 years, and they're both two great guys, two wonderful people, principled, intelligent, smart, driven, all that stuff. Really, really talented people, and so I was delighted to join them, and I've been delighted since. So that's where we are, and of course pleased that you have joined our team. It's great to have you along.
I'm excited. The question I actually want to bring it back to is this idea of endurance. You could have retired, Shaun. I assume that you did well in the steel business. You've been doing well as a business broker, but you chose not to. And so I'm curious why.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd do. I play tennis in the development. There's only I live in. There's only so much tennis you could play. I could be involved more in, I have been involved in our HOA there, and I could be more involved in that. I decided to park that because it was taking a little bit too much time. But it's really interesting that in the running of a pretty large 5,500 home HOA, so I enjoyed that. I am on the board of the British American Business Council of Central Florida.
The accent helps there too.
Certainly, yes. So I'm the vice president there, and we just started that about 18 months ago, and it's rocketed. It's really, really good. So I could be doing all of that stuff. I was on the board of a charity that brings seriously ill and disabled children to the Florida area for the holiday of a lifetime. Dream Flight. That was a wonderful charity, and I'm still involved. I still do a tiny little bit, not as much as I used to, but I retired from the board there.
The SBDC.
Well, of course, yes. The Small Business Development Center here in Orlando is a wonderful organization. I'd recommend anybody in small business to get themselves down there and at least chat with their representatives down there who are there to help. They're terrific people. As part of the SBDC, there's the Advisory Board Council, which what they do, they form an advisory board. The lady there, Jill Kaufman, who runs that program, they form an advisory board, and that exists for about 18 months, and you go and meet and sit and look at the business and what you think they can achieve and how to help them to achieve it. So that takes me back to my old days when I was sitting in management boards. So I enjoy that. I've enjoyed that. I was fortunate enough to be honoured with the advisory board member, local Central Florida member of the year in I can't believe it, 2016, 10 years ago. So that was something I'm very, very proud of. So yeah, I could do all of those things, but this is stimulating, isn't it? Business brokering is stimulating, for me, I'm a naive person. I believe in a handshake being all that you need in life. And I like to meet people and try and do something for them, and have a handshake and say let's go and let's try and do it. Unfortunately, we also need a bit of paper, but that's it's the handshake that counts. It's morally so. So yeah.
I was when I first started having my conversation with Matt about joining FitzGibbon Alexander, he was like, well, I met with him, and he basically told me every reason why I shouldn't become a business broker.
Yes.
Right, and he talked me through all the challenges that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
I met with Ed, and he did the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, also you need to meet with Shaun. And I was like, okay. And they're like, I think Matt was like, just let him talk, right? Because you'll get a lot out of it. And I was shocked during the course of our coffee here at the Citrus Club when you told me how old you were. And I know I've given you a little bit of ribbing here and there about that, but I've born and raised here in Central Florida. You do get those people who much younger than you, that they retire, they clock out, and then they just sit on a beach somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing more than some of these people with just doing it on your own, right? The SBDC, the British American Council, like the volunteering, the business brokerage, which takes a ton of time and effort and mental acuity to get through these financials of some of these people. And you've seen way more deals and financials than I have, but you just don't give up. And I love that.
Well, if I didn't enjoy it, I would. I live in a over 55 active adult community, and I see as I drive out in my shirt and tie, as they say, and they're all in shorts and t-shirts off to play pickleball, of course, and some tennis or golf. We've got 2 courses in our community, and I think there's 200 clubs. You can play whatever. I always think of this thing about old people playing Parcheesi. I don't know what it is. It's like Seinfeld. I'm a big Seinfeld fan. In life, I always say, right, whatever you're doing in life, there's a Seinfeld episode for that.
Yeah.
And I don't think they ever said, Del Boca. Remember the Del Boca Vista, where his parents went to live in Del Boca Vista, and of course where I live is Del Boca Vista. I mean, that's where it is with all the animosity that goes on, and people just having too much time on their hands. There is that as well. So that does the place. I love being there. I've lived there many years, but I'm happy when I'm driving past them. Quite frankly, because I'm going to be stimulated by whatever happens. And as you know, just in the last few months, I started my own podcast and what I did was to bring in people who are associated with small business. So SBDC, advisory board, a very good CPA, people who have sold their business, people who have bought business. So just so I can say to people, listen, tune in, you're going to pick something up. You're going to pick something up about your business. And if you're thinking of selling, you're going to pick something up. And if you're thinking of buying, you'll pick something up as well. And so I do that at a studio in Winter Park, and that's what they're out now. Some of them are out more and more, and I have got some work to do to sort of promote them now. That's my next mission, to be doing that. So it's a challenge. So using social media, I was. The National Entrepreneur Centre, where the SBDC is, they've got various groups, including SCORE, and they have associations, the Winter Park Business Academy. I was there last week at a guy who is, I tell you, this guy, if you want an AI expert, now there's lots of AI experts. I know the AI expert, I can tell you, absolutely positively. I've sat in on last year I sat in on one of his presentations. I thought, this guy is really, really smart. And Ray Ortega is his name. And I thought, this guy, and he's so easy. He's not, a lot you come across. He's so easy. Well, this and this and this, so we do this and this and this. Very, very sharp guy. So I had him on the show. A few weeks ago. That's yet to come out. But last week I went to his latest presentation, and he's doing 3 on the subject, March, April, and May. So get if you're interested, you should go and see that, the Winter Park Business Academy. And they're good. So I've been to a number of presentations that they do, and that's how I came to go on at the studio, and there's this studio, C47 Studios, and I met the owner, and Josh Pies is his name, and we got together and said, okay, let's do it. So we had an agreement, and I've been taping podcasts ever since. So it's stimulating, isn't it? The thing is, when you read about celebrities who have passed away and they're younger than you, that's celebrities or sports people, and 72 years, oh crumbs, yeah, that's a shame, younger than me, but I'm in decent shape, and mentally I think I'm okay. Nothing started to fail yet, I don't think. That's the problem. So I thoroughly enjoy it. I really do.
What I appreciate about you is when you and I met, I think probably better than the second coffee we had, you basically said, all right, if I was going to turn back the clock, this is how I would do it.
Yeah.
And I've listened to some bits of the podcast, and I've listened to some other conversations between you, Matt, and Ed, and stuff like that. And what I've kind of picked out is that some salespeople, some real estate agents, people I know in my network, they take their success metrics or how they were successful and they hold it very close to their chest, right? They don't want to let anyone in on that. But what I picked up from you in the very beginning, it's like, I'm happy to tell you.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to share it with you.
Yep.
And I'm curious, what that to me is counter to a lot of salespeople or people who have a sales aspect to their job. You've been educating people and offering free advice.
Well, yeah, that's very true. And I think it's important. And by the way, business brokers of Florida in particular are very good at this. So if you go to a local BBF meeting, or if you go to the annual conference, which is in that's down south, Lauderdale, I think, isn't it? In August, isn't it? Yeah. You'll see that people will be there giving presentations, and they don't hang back, because the market is. I think there's several reasons. Certainly, the market's big enough for us not to have to squabble, shall we say. But also, the truth will be out. So if somebody takes, 5 notes from a presentation and goes in front of a client and a potential client and says, "This is the way we do it," if you don't know it and understand it inherently, or you haven't experienced it, then it's probably going to show. Yeah. So there's a very good friend of mine who was in the Orlando area. He's moved over. He now works out of Tampa. His name's Mike Shea, and your presentation that Mike's giving, he's done countless deals. He carries a lot of listings. That's his thing, not mine, but that's his thing. But his presentations, he doesn't hang back at all. He tells exactly, how to do it, what to do, how to succeed. I think people do that. IBBA as well. The IBBA is a great institution, and they want to improve the quality, and they want people to learn. And so older, more experienced people are just sharing their ideas, and I try to do the same.
Yeah, I think what I picked up during my BBF onboarding too was that we encourage co-brokering. And so, well, if I'm super successful and I have a ton of listings and I can teach something to this person who's going to get them a ton of listings or a ton of buyers, well, that actually also benefits me.
Yes.
Because now we're working together.
Absolutely.
And you don't get that in other sales organizations. Didn't get that in my old sales organization.
Well, of course, again, BBF is quite unique. You will not find that same co-brokering attitude in, I'm going to say, many other parts of the country. We foster it here, always have. 20 odd years I've been doing this right from day one. Roger Murphy was part of one of the 4 people who started BBF, which is about 30 years old now, I think. And the rules and regulations, he was part of the people who started it. So he very much encouraged us all to do that. And yeah, I think it works here. It works. Now, let's be careful. You got to make sure that the broker is somebody that you know, love, and trust, and that the people that they're bringing in as a potential buyer for your business are genuine buyers, because you're not working with them. Yep. This is the one time that we actually split, and we have the listing broker working for the seller and the buying broker working for the buyer, and that's it. So there is that danger that there's a little wall between you and the buyer, of course. But generally speaking, the brokers are very good and they're very well trained, and there are some exceptions to the rule, and I know who those exceptions are, and because you can't just have somebody saying, "Well, I've got a buyer for you." Well, are they qualified? We have this thing about being qualified, and who knows what that is. Define qualified for me. But it's not just financially. But it is financially, but it's not just financially. Yeah. So financially, background, experience, where are they? Where are they located? I had an old broker again at Murphy again has sadly passed away. A very nice guy, and he was a really experienced broker. And he used to say, "Look, if somebody's living, somewhere else in the country, and I'm coming to Florida, which a lot of people do, coming to Florida, and I'm going to buy a business down here. Okay, fine, yeah, okay. Would you mind?" And he used to say this: "Would you mind just looking out the window at your driveway? Is there a U-Haul truck in your driveway? And if there isn't, then they're not coming. So, and I've had some experience of that. People who are saying they're coming and whatever, and it's just and people who say, well, can this business be run from afar? Will it run by? Generally speaking, no. Come and there's an owner of the business in the business right now. They're in there every day, having all the fun and anguish of running a small business. You got to come and do it. If you want, you can't do it from Denver.
Yeah.
I've had people who have tried to do it. And I just said, no, it would not be possible. I'm very clear on that now. And now, if it's currently being run from afar, even that's tricky. But there's some chance, if you will. But no, come and run the business.
What is the fun and anguish of being a business broker?
Oh, the one thing that's the most precious commodity, particularly when you get a little older, of course, but the most precious commodity is time. And I have the scars to show, for all the time I wasted with deals I should not have wasted. So listings, maybe I shouldn't have taken, and buyers that I shouldn't have dealt with, and that's more fool me, If I was honest, if I looked in the mirror and I was honest with myself, more fool me. So don't do it. So that means more upfront work, and being honest with sellers. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to take this listing because ABC, and one of those I'm sorry's could be I'm sorry, not prepared to take this listing because I valued the business based upon market conditions, which is what I do, all day, every day. Based upon market conditions, I believe that this business should be listed for sale at this price. If you want more, then I'm sorry, I'm not the person to. We could try it at that, and what about no, we can try it at this, and so I'm. I think that's one. So it's time. It's time when you're banging your head against a wall, and so you got to buyers. Well, tell me what your plans are. Tell me, where are you located? Well, when you get down here, then what about this? And so let's look at your financials, please. I need proof of funds, and I'm absolutely adamant on that now. Buy a financial statement, proof of funds, bang. That's it. My aunt's promised me 50,000. Well, when she's put it in your account, then it's there. But prior to that, it isn't. So that's the biggest anguish is time. The time that I've spent, some would say wasted, and I think if you ask a lot of brokers, they may well tell you that same thing.
And the fun?
Oh. When the champagne cork hits the ceiling and I get a little bit of spray on my shoulder, happy buyer, happy seller, it really is. It's invigorating. I've got photos. I look back and think, oh yeah, we did that as a team. We being, okay, the seller, obviously the buyer. Yeah, I'll throw myself in there as well. The banker, the landlord, all of those elements that come together to make it happen. And of course then the attorney putting all the documentation together. All of those people, we as a team made it happen. Oh, we couldn't get an inch. I remember a deal some years ago. We were due to close 2 days before closing. Insurance the insurance. So yeah, we'll just run on with the existing insurance. Okay, yeah, fine. 2 days before closing, the the broker said, oh, they're not writing this anymore. Whatever it was, whatever company it was. No, they're pulling that out of, they don't do it anymore. Well, so now we've got to get so finding an insurance broker who could, whatever, one insurance company. So just something like that you never think of. Licenses, my God, licenses, general contract. I had a screen way back when Charlie came through. Mm-hmm. That was 2004. That was in my early days. A screen business. Getting a license for a screen business, my goodness, it's just like the same as a general contractor license. It's 4 years, and 4 years. That's it. Well, you've got to get the experience, and then you've got to do the tests. Here in Florida, it's very tough. Licensing is very tough. I have this thing about the 100 hurdles to close a deal, and getting over 99 of them won't do it. You got to get over all of them, and some are small hurdles, some are big hurdles. But you got to get over all of them, and that's what licensing. Well, what's your license? Well, I've had this general contractor. I've had general contractors for sale, and I always say, with all due respect to pizza places, you got a pizza business. I've never sold a pizza business, by the way, but you got a pizza business. I could learn to make pizza, even in a week. I'm sure I could. So pizza business, the world's your oyster. A general contractor, the spectrum of potential buyers narrows down considerably. So you've just got to be looking at all that. Is it how are we going to do it? What will we do? What about qualifying the business after sale? Well, there's dangers with that. Or there's somebody in the organization who has the license and they'll qualify the business. So now, here you are, you're buying a business, your whole life is thrown on this business, your livelihood is thrown on this business, and you're dependent upon somebody who works for you to qualify the business and to continue to qualify the business. That might be okay, but are you okay with it? Do you understand what that actually means? Could you be held to ransom by them? And then we've got big boy buyers. What about big boy buyers? We're not even talked about them. The institutional investors and private equity groups, and they. By the way, when they come in, they're in charge. The seller and the broker. Let's just they're in charge because they just run the show. I had an example a couple of years ago. With a month to go to selling to closing, we're all ticking along, and we'd been through up and down with this. There were all kinds of things going off, but this particular bit, they said, right, excellent. We're coming to onboard the staff next week. So I said, okay. I think I know what you mean by that. We're coming down and we're going to tell them all about the wonders of working for our organization and all of the benefits that they're going to get. And I said, but the staff don't know. And generally speaking, the staff don't know, And so I said to the seller, here's what they want to do. As soon as the cat's out the bag, as soon as this happens. So the seller had to make a very big decision, and the buyer said, "Well, that's what we do. We've done it dozens and scores of times, and that's what we do." So that was a very tricky time. We got it done. We got the deal done, but that was so working with the big. So I meet people, and I'm sure you have, or you certainly will. Oh, they're sweeping through the country buying up tire repair businesses.
HVAC, tire repair.
Yeah. They're coming. They're paying a premium for this. Yeah. Okay. Right. So let's get some. Oh, and then of course there's I always when I'm giving a presentation to sellers, and I've done quite a few down at the SBDC and other places, and I said, well, tell me. Right at the beginning, tell me what's the multiple? So Come on, somebody's got a multiple story here. You know a guy who was sitting on a plane next to a couple of people who were talking about they knew somebody's aunt who had sold their business, one of those, for 10 times. Well, 10 times what?
Yeah.
If it exists anyway. And what kind of a business was? Oh, exactly the same. Yeah, right. Is it sellers' discretionary earnings? Is it EBITDA? What is it? And what's the difference between So
it's always 3 to 5 SD, right? It's
3 to 5 SD.
My business didn't sell for that.
And you know what that means. So going back to your previous question, all of this stuff has got to be whirling around in your mind, and you've just got to walk the seller through it all. You just walk them, Landlords. I had a terrible experience with a landlord a couple of years ago, and they flat out said, we don't want to lose this. We don't want to lose this owner of the business. Well, yeah, but she wants to move on. Well, yeah, but we don't want them to move on. Well, yeah, but it's I think it's their prerogative. Well, we just So they put every hurdle, every block in the way that they could. Ultimately, we did get it done. A couple of unusual little clauses in the contract, but we did get it done, and but they were awful to deal with. They were absolutely awful. I've experienced different ones, but this particular group were absolutely dreadful, and they just didn't care. That's life. So you got to overcome all of these things, and it's all a mental challenge. It's good stuff.
Both the funny and the English. Well, Shaun, I appreciate your time this morning. I appreciate you for being a mentor to me as I've come on and gotten spun up for the last few months, and I appreciate that you have the endurance to keep being an excellent business broker. And every person I've met at the club, when they ask me what I do, and then I say where I work, FitzGibbon Alexander, they go, "Oh, with Shaun." I'm like, "Yeah, with Shaun." They go, "He's the best guy." And then it's a 3 or 4 minutes on how Shaun's the best guy, and it's like, "Oh, I know. I work with him, and he's taking me under his wing a little bit." But as we wrap up here, where can people find more about you and your podcast?
Well, yes. So Happy Buyer, Happy Seller is my podcast. I am a little bit behind in doing the promotion as I should be. I've got about 3 or 4, maybe even 4 or 5 now, which are actually on the. So they're on the usual radio channels, which are iHeartRadio, Apple, Google. What's the big one? I should know. The big podcaster.
YouTube?
No. So YouTube, we've got that. That's the video. So they're all videoed, and we've got video snips. And then I'm going to Spotify. Thank you very much. So it's on all of those. But I'm just in the process of any moment now my own website, which I grabbed some time ago, the businessbrokerorlando.com, which it's called, but actually happybuyerhappyseller.com. I grabbed that recently, which was a bit of a coup for me, so I'm really pleased about that. So that will also take people. I would say in the next couple of weeks it's going to be on the.
By the time this one comes out, you should be.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Yeah. So it'll be there. Yeah, and a bit about me on there, and a bit about what I do, and what I'm then doing is what we're just talking about, all the advice for sellers and buyers. I'm putting that on my website as well. So a little bit about this, bit about, for example, SBA financing. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, one of my podcasts is one of the very best SBA financing ladies around here, who I think you know, don't you?
Yes, she did my deal when I bought my business in 2020.
Yep, Lynn Singletary, and she's been. I've known her for very many years. She's really, really good. So she was on my show. So that was that's got lots of information there. We also had, of course, I had Matt on and I had Ed on talking about closing. I mean, the closing process. What you got to do. So so you can find me on all of that stuff. More to come. And it's really exciting. I'm really, 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 really happy with the way the podcast has gone. It's like an injection for me, sort of an injection of enthusiasm as well, if you will. But I've always been enthusiastic anyway. But it's really good. It's really good.
I appreciate it. Well, Shaun, you're the best, man. I appreciate your time this morning. And I'm sure we'll talk again on this.
Well, that's kind of it. It's you may have noticed I enjoy talking, so that's just the way I am. So,
it seems to be a common thread in business brokers.
Now you're right there. Absolutely, yeah. I think it's you've got to have tremendous mental agility and mathematical capability, and just the personality to meet and
a love for storytelling.
Absolutely, and a love for storytelling. That's very good. So there we are. Yeah. And you gave me the opportunity to talk about Shackleton. What more could I ask for?
Appreciate you, Shaun.
All right. Thanks very much. That was fantastic.